Hello, everyone. I would like to call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. The city would like to recognize that we are on the homeland of the Ktunaxa Nation. Maurice, are there any late items?
There is an updated presentation from the RDK that was replaced on the agenda today.
Can I have a mover to approve the agenda? Councillor McBain and Councillor McGuire seconds. All in favor? Wonderful. Okay. I've never done this before, if you're wondering. So like, that's why it's weird. So we'll all work through it together. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. So we have the minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting held on April 17th, 2023. Can I have a mover to approve the agenda? Councillor Dunneback, and a seconder, Councillor McGuire. All in favor? Excellent. And then can I, the minutes from the Committee of the Whole held on October 21st, 2024. Can I have a mover and for that, Councillor McGuire, and a seconder, Councillor McBain? That one has an amendment to it, correct? Yes, because you forgot to put me as present in roll call. It's fine, you can fix things. Okay, so we have a couple of delegations. Oh, sorry, I forgot part. What did I forget? I know, I knew it. Ah, newbie problems. Okay. Did I get receive the minutes as corrected. All in favor? Perfect. Okay. Working through it, working through it. It's gonna be okay. Okay. So with that, we have a delegation about alternatives to slash pile burning in the Kimberley Nature Park by Dr. Biggie. Oh, I don't remember how to say your last name. I'm so sorry. Oh, Weishidl. Okay, thank you. Oh,
Can I switch the slides? Okay, let's try it. You want me to try? See, okay. I don't know where I'm pointing this. Not doing anything. Okay, we got it. Okay, all right, we're ready? Yes, okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I've met some of you personally, and so we really appreciate that we can speak here. I will walk you through the PowerPoint that at least the corporate officer has already seen, expressing what we've already expressed in emails to many of you already. And I wanted to introduce who's with me today mostly. So I have Kat, Vicky, Dinah, Daryl, and myself, Biggie. Mark is working out of town, can't make it today. MLA McInnes is in Victoria, but we'll be reviewing the recording. That's about all I know about the people that have been involved. So, it's in my head. So we want to talk about the slash pile burning, as you know. So of course, we're very supportive about the wildfire risk reduction that has been going on. But we do feel that the health of the residents also needs to be a priority. So the current approach is to create those slash piles that we probably have all seen, and then use the city firefighters to complete the burning. To summarize our concerns, and this will cover a few of the slides, significant effort involved to create those piles. They need to be cut multiple times, covered with the butcher paper, and then at a later point, people come back, ignite them, monitor the burning. So we have an increased risk of wildfire while they're sitting in the forest. increased carbon footprint, which again creates this cycle of then having more climate change, higher wildfire risk, air pollution, etc. We would really like to see the wood chips used for something rather than burnt. And also one of the other concerns, and there's a few more, is that the soil gets sterilized where you burn, and native grasses and the regrowth is affected. So I have a bunch of sources on the PowerPoint that I don't have any time to go into, but I hope that you get a chance to maybe review that. So there's a bunch of hyperlinks included here. I have a bunch more pictures than that, but I try to include what shows most what we're worried about. So last fall, when the burning started, we witnessed, and this is eyewitness reports of violation of the BC open burning law. So for example, on a day that the venting index prohibits open burning, there were slash pads ignited, which we have an eyewitness for. They are supposed to be out by 4 p.m. or at least reduced to 10% of the surface in smoldering and burning. And that was done because the picture with the snow is weeks after ignition and it's still smoldering. So many weeks we had the smoke going. For me, also one of the major concerns is, as you can see in the one picture, is the burns get out of hand and actually damage healthy, huge trees. Vicky and I were actually there yesterday. There's dozens of huge, beautiful trees that are damaged at the bottom because you could see where the original pile was and it just went further than that. There was other things, minor things, such as the permit wasn't even issued when that started, because I know from the ministry that the city applied on November 12th. The eyewitness for the burning with the low venting index was on November 13th, and the permit was not issued until November 22nd. Yeah, so yesterday when we walked that, I mean, it looks pretty bad. I have a few more comments about the health effects. So again, as you can see, there's lots of links going to scientific research. Dementia, lung cancer, respiratory illnesses, all of that are heavily affected by smoke. So I hope that you have a chance to maybe read some of this research, but we're really concerned about that. Remember that we had to endure many weeks of this. So this wasn't just a day. It was not put out by 4 p.m. as the ministry and the open learning laws require. So we literally had weeks of sleeping in smoke, and we had sore throats, headaches, waking up. We've got cancer survivors among us. It wasn't acceptable. And the trail use was also affected. So it was really hard to actually use the trails, which is what the park is there for. This is just kind of a summary. So yes, it's important to protect our properties and everything, but really everything else is important until you get sick. And then there's nothing more important than getting healthy once you have that. So I don't know how people individually can relate to that. If you have somebody diagnosed, let's say, with dementia in your family, it's devastating. And I think if you think back and say, well, the smoke from the slash pads increase the risk, I think it would break everybody's heart, and you will understand why we basically advocate for healthier operations. A few more comments here, and basically what we're advocating for is chipping instead of the burning. It is quicker and cheaper and healthier. So we would like to see that being done instead of the slash piles being burnt. It needs to be cut only once and fed into the chipper. We're reducing the carbon footprint. We can use the wood chips on trails, even though I have a few more suggestions for the wood chips. The wood chips do not promote fire. I've done extensive research on that. I've talked to experts. They actually rot into the ground. They absorb moisture. There's no air in between, so they can't just ignite and suddenly a fire burns wild. The slash piles are actually a much higher fire risk the way they're sitting there. On a larger scale, because we do have a lot of woods around here, we've been looking into alternatives of use, so production of insulation materials. We can look at maybe selling it for power generation. The mill can use the wood chips. It can also be used around town. I know fairly well from my search and rescue operations that there's a lot of muddy areas around town that could benefit from that. I do encourage you to maybe, if you go to the park, just outside of the park, maybe 100 meters away from the first slash pads in the park, Tech has been doing the reduction as well. And they've been chipping. So you can see there's nice trails. There's a beautifully clean forest, thinned out, safe forest. And it looks very different from 100 meters over where I've burnt scars and damaged trees and all of that. So it can be done. There's biochar also that can be an option for the wood chips. I tried to add a few more examples. So this is a write-up on a factory in Maine that actually uses wood chips to produce building insulation. So again, if you're thinking a little more long-term, that would be a great industry to bring to the area and use something that we have a lot of. Could be a great attraction for the region. In terms of the wood chips, just to address a few more things, I talked to people who work in the field. So there's dump trucks that can be used to get the wood chips actually out of the forest. They're small ones. They can actually turn 180 degrees, so they're on tracks. A few more uses. They can be mixed into compost, speed up decomposition. They can be added to sludge from plants and sewage wastewater. Just looking at the costs and everything, because we hear that a lot, the chipping involves the same cost for the initial kind of getting it cut out of the forest, but then you only need to move it once. You basically take one piece of wood, feed it into the chipper. You don't have to get it into the 3 by 3 meter pile and then come back and administer the burning. So the slash piles, yeah, some more effort to come back and do that. You have to wait for the weather to be favorable to do that. You have to have people on call to wait it out if you can't do it. And also the higher fire danger because of the air in the wood debris. One example, for example, if you look at the highway, we still have slash pads sitting south of Rotary that have been sitting there for a while. That's a fire hazard. Compare that to north of Rotary, where highways put in 1 day's worth of work, cleared all the trees on the side, chipped it right away, and they were done within a day. And everything looks good, and it's gone. It's not sitting there representing a fire risk. A few more things just from my research. I talked to the people in Kelowna because they have a chipping program, and I asked them what they did with it. And the response from the wildfire mitigation specialist was, depends on the quality of the material that comes in. It's using for compost or sending it off as power generation. So I had suggestions where Tech, for example, here on the ridge could be using that as well, because they use filters, so it's not affecting the air quality. A few more examples where it was considered what the burning does to the air pollution. So city of Nelson, the smoke exposure actually close to a hospital in that case, and the residences dictated some of the decisions that they made about the fuel mitigation. And then this one in West Kelowna, so Brookhaven is a care home. They also worked with, they considered the vulnerable populations and decided not to burn. So it can be done. And I think it's a valid consideration what the people next to it experience. So we would like the city and the nature park and the fire department just to carry out the fuel reduction, but while also making the health of the residents a priority, because it really is. There are options to get it done responsibly. I know this was just a quick overview, but long-term, it's a resource that can be used and sold. And as residents, we just ask that to please modify the approach, use the firefighters that we as taxpayers pay for the chipping, maybe teach them how to do the chipping instead of the burning, and really as an result and effect of that to keep the residents healthy, because there are other options. Thank you.
Council, any questions, comments? Councillor Cairns?
Okay. And absolutely, you know, air quality and health are critically important. And the point of the wildfire mitigation work is to protect lives in the community as a whole. And I appreciate you bringing up the, you know, the ideas, the bigger picture. It's great to see the ideas, and we've chatted before. So the, you know, the way I kind of view this as a discussion for the long term. And, you know, keeping aware of possibilities, right? And we also have the current logistical challenges that, you know, are very big. And you know, I'd really like to hear from Will, but I just want to just make a couple of points around, you know, that pile burning is one very small part of a much bigger program, much bigger picture. And every site is different. And so there's different logistical pieces that go with every single site. And then, you know, my last point is just that we really all need to be preparing for a smokier future. And so, you know, I want to highlight that there's options as well. We should be watching the forecasts and also setting ourselves up with air filters in our homes so that we're prepared for what's coming down the pipe. So those are just a couple of comments. I have a lot more to say, but I'd rather hear from others. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kearns. Just to confirm, no decisions get made here. That happens later. But just so you guys know, this is more just informational. Did you have a question for Will, Sue?
Well, just wondering if you'd like to comment, Will, and possibly Bob as well.
Thank you, Councillor Cairns. I don't really have too much to comment on this right now. We are hosting a public open house tomorrow, starting at 5:30 p.m. till 7, just on the fuels management program, what's going on in the future, and why we actually slash pile burn, prescribe burn, chip as well, and how we do fuels management within Kimberley, not just one single focus on that end of it. So everybody in this room is invited, councillors as well, and staff, 5:30 tomorrow.
Is that at the fire hall, Will?
It is at the fire hall. Thank
Excellent.
you, Councillor Fox.
Council, any? Thank you very much, all of you, for coming in, and thank you for your presentation and all the research you put into it. I really appreciate that. So move. And so we have another delegation from the Regional District of East Kootenay. I'm going to get y'all to introduce it one at a time, introduce yourselves as you come up, but yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'll start by introducing myself. Sean Tomlin. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer at the RDEK. First of all, thank you for inviting us out this evening. And as Mayor McCormick was commenting earlier, it's been a while since we've been out to present to council, and largely because we've gone to an approach of hosting a regional governance forum after each election. So shameless plug, I'll put that in right now to watch for that after the next election, and you'll get all this information and more. But for tonight, we do have a fairly extensive presentation. I'll start off talking about the regional district model in general and our regional district, and then going through quite a suite of our services. And so everybody will come up after me. I'm not sure what order we've got it all in. We've got Kevin Patterson, our General Manager of Engineering and Environmental Services, and Ronquist, our Chief Financial Officer, Duchek, the Communications Manager. Sure, are you presenting, or you're here in support? Michelle Bates, General Manager of Planning and Development Services, and Christina Carberry, our Protective Services Manager. So I'll leave it to you guys, I guess, to decide whether you want to ask questions after each section, or
I was actually going to, you're okay if they as they pop up? Or would you rather wait till the end of each section?
Probably the end of each section, I think. Otherwise, we've got quite a bit to get through, and it could take quite a while if we do it that way. So yeah, so I'll jump in, and I'll try to stick to my notes in order to keep from going too much overtime as well. Right. So yeah, starting off talking about just the regional district model in general. So there are 27 regional districts throughout BC. Each one is very different from the next in terms of the blend of municipalities and rural areas, right from Metro Vancouver, where there's 21 municipalities and only one electoral area, to Caribou with 4 municipalities, 12 EAs. Central Coast is unique in that there are no municipalities in that regional district. It's only electoral areas. Central Okanagan, interesting example. There's 4 municipalities and 2 electoral areas, so quite a small number. But the city of Kelowna, being as large as it is, actually makes up, full half of the board. Their weighted vote, they make up 27 out of 43, and the unweighted, they're 6 of 12. So they carry a lot of weight with that regional district. So purposes of a regional district. So they are an independent, responsible, accountable order of government. These are the purposes that are outlined in the Local Government Act. So providing good government, providing services for all or part of the community, stewardship of the assets, and social and environmental well-being for all of the community. So fairly general at that level, and then each kind of develops on its own in terms of how they carry at it. Regional districts were created in the mid-60s, so haven't been around nearly as long as a lot of the municipalities. Prior to that, it was the provincial government that was managed services in the rural areas and improvement districts. And so then they were created to work alongside. It's not a separate tier of government. Regional districts operate as a federation, really, of the municipalities and the electoral areas working together. And providing coordinated services. And it is a model that's unique to BC. Regional districts don't exist in the same kind of format anywhere else in the country, or even so. In a lot of ways, we feel some pride in how well it works together. And I'm sure there's always some things that people feel could be done better. So when we do talk to people who aren't familiar with regional districts, it seems like the easy explanation is always, well, we're the local government. But it is a bit broader than that, really. That just makes up part of what we do. So that is one of the 3 main pieces, is that we are the local government providing services to those areas the same way as a municipality provides. But they're also created to provide that framework to allow shared services through municipalities and rural areas, and working together in various combinations. And then, of course, providing some region-wide services. So those ones we provide to the rural and municipal residents all collectively at once. So there are a few services, as noted up there, that are mandated by the province. So those are the ones that we do have to do. But beyond that, we can provide any services as requested by the residents of the rural municipal areas. So it can vary quite a bit when we look at one regional district to the next, what types of services are provided, but there are many that are quite similar. And each service has a defined number of participants. We'll say who participates in it, and each jurisdiction has usually the opportunity to opt into those as they see fit at the time those services are established. So a few of the principles around that, it is really designed to be very flexible. So a lot of flexibility, as I said, in terms of determining what services to provide and on what scale. And as part of that, also determining who's in. So aside from the ones mandated from the province, so out of the 4 in the last slide, the 2 that apply to municipalities are general administration and solid waste. So those are the ones the province has said that the regional districts are to provide the solid waste service across their regions. And so that's why the landfills and transfer stations fall within our jurisdiction. Fiscal equivalency is really designed to try and match who's benefiting from each service with who's paying. And so the boundaries can be set up, soft boundaries to allow for that, so that can be drawn kind of wherever in order to match those paying for the service with those that are actually receiving the benefit of it. And so particularly in the rural areas, we see those boundaries moving on a fairly regular basis, depending on, say a water system will have a defined boundary, and then we can extend that out if there's more development that would connect. Or fire protection as more customers are interested in the service. So each service is established through an establishing bylaw, and each of those bylaws, both when it's created and when it's amended, require approval of the inspector of municipalities. And so they're to verify that everything's been done accordingly and that all the participants have been consulted. Often that also requires elector assent with those establishments. Outside of the service area model, we do also see a lot of services that are provided under contract in both directions, whether it, a couple of examples there, often we contract with municipalities to provide fire protection outside. We, of course, had the referendum in the fall where we were looking at that with the city of Kimberley. We do have contracts like that in place with most other municipalities in the region. Rather than establishing a fire hall outside of town, it often makes more sense to work in conjunction. Canal Flats Arena is an example there, where that's operated, funded through a regional district service, but managed and overseen by the city of, or the village of Canal Flats. So they operate that on our behalf via contract. Contracts going the other way, we offer building inspection services to municipalities, mostly just on a kind of vacation relief or as needed basis, but some on the whole, also village at Canal Flats, that's been an ongoing service there. GIS, we do provide that service to a few municipalities as well. So some of the key differences between the regional district model and municipalities in terms of how we operate. The first key one is that we're not a taxing authority, so we don't issue tax notices, and as a result of that, province for the rural and each municipality their boundaries to collect the taxes on our behalf for those services. And so when Mayor speaks of the check that gets written, that's when we send our requisition into the city to collect those taxes on our behalf from residents within your boundaries. The second one, the matching of expenses and revenues with each service. So that's something specific to us as well, as every service has its own budget, and all the funds that are collected with it are tracked separately, and it has to be that way because they all have a separate tax base. So differently in a municipality where you've got all the same residents in all your services, we keep it all very separate so that everybody's getting the benefit they've paid for. Roads and policing are a couple of the services that municipalities are involved with. They do, but those are two that we stay out of completely. On a tax notice, there's a separate line thing that the province collects, and the provincial rural tax, which is used in a significant way. They actually track, they don't keep track of what they collected and what they spent the same way we do, but that's intended to fund roads. And then the fourth one is the establishment of services. So where city can, through your council, has a lot more unilateral power to make decisions of adding services to your repertoire. We would generally need to be going to the community through a referendum consent process for the establishment of any new services. So that tends to mean we need to go back to them if we want to make changes to it, which would include the boundary, but also includes things like increasing the maximum taxation. Legislation. Sure. Sure. Okay, so in the rural areas, yeah, many of the local services would be fire protection, water, sewer, mosquito control. Airport, which includes municipalities. We operate in the Elk Valley. The biggest ones. Yeah, we'll see quite a few more come up. Yeah, legislative wise, the one major difference is the Local Government Act, which is an aging piece of legislation. It does refer in quite a few places to the community charter that municipalities work under. And so there is a movement in place right now, it seems like, to try get it updated and provide us with a few more of the powers that municipalities have. And then most of the rest of those listed are the same legislation that you would be working with. So yeah, focusing on the RDEK itself, this map outlines where our boundary is and is broken up into the electoral areas. So we do border on Alberta and border on the US. On the north end, we extend up just past Spilamachine, and on the west, between Moy and Yak. So it is, see, in the 2021 census, population is 17,283 in the rural areas, 47,889 in municipalities, and 724 in First Nations communities. So we're just over 65,000 people, including the municipal. This one highlighting those the electoral areas. Many of our services are split, managed sub-regionally, and so we would see the Columbia Valley being areas F and G, and those municipalities working together in those ones. The Elk Valley, area A with Fernie, Sparwood, and Elkford, and then the central sub-region generally is areas B, C, and E, and Cranbrook and Kimberley. Some of that varies a bit. Our emergency programs, area B is in the Elk Valley one. We'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. So governance wise, we have our regional board that oversees things in much the same way that your council does. Our board is made up of 15 directors, 6 of which represent the electoral areas and 9 representing 8 municipalities. So City of Cranbrook has 2 representatives given their population. And so the rural area directors are elected for a 4-year term, aligning at the same time as you all are. The municipal directors are appointed by each municipal council, and generally, in most cases, it's the mayor, and generally stays that way for the 4-year term. However, it is at the council's discretion to change that appointment at any time. The City of Cranbrook, obviously, with 2, it's got to be someone else besides the mayor as well. And that's where sometimes it gets a bit complex actually in the model is, you know, what the responsibilities of each director are when they attend the meetings. And so each director does represent the interests of the residents and property owners and businesses in their areas. Municipal directors are also representing the interests of their council. But that said, they are an independent representative and come to the board meetings with an open mind and have to be you know, available to listen to the discussion and all the arguments being made. And so it's it wouldn't be appropriate for a council to pass a resolution directing the representative for how to vote on any particular subject. They do need to be free to participate once they attend. There are some items that will come back to the council depending on what they are. And so service establishment bylaws tend to be one of those things. And so if City of Kimberley is going to participate in a new service, then that decision can't be made by the voters. Come back to the council. Maybe take a brief digression when I talk about that, because something that you will hopefully be seeing later this year when we talked about the sub-regional services, and Christina will be talking about our emergency programs later on. Those services are set up. We're currently on a sub-regional basis. So we have the 3 different services, and that dates back to, you know, how they were operated back when they were created 25 years or so ago. But now everything operates more regionally. And so we are looking at trying merging those services all collectively into one, and that way all expenses will be tracked in one budget for the region. And so in order to do that, it will require the approval or consent of 2/3 of the participants, which means each electoral area and each municipality. So you'll be seeing that later in the year once we get the details worked out into what that'll look like. Also, all directors responsible for ensuring the success of any regional district services they participate in. So they are making decisions based on the value to the entire area just by that service, not just the residents within their jurisdiction. And then the fourth point there, just providing that debate and policy and decision making for the entire region. And anytime there is a service that is in a area, then the whole board does vote on it. It's the system is designed since there is only one director for each rural area. They don't have complete say over any one thing. So say we've got a fire protection area within one area, then that director doesn't have complete autonomy over that. Any decisions relating to that will be on the member. Just touch briefly on our strategic plan. So generally how this is approached is within the first 6 or 8 months of the beginning of each term, then the board will establish what their strategic goals are. And generally that's with a facilitated session, looking at what's going on in the world at the time and the goals of everyone who's been elected and coming up with those priorities. And then we work with that and a project rating system to use those overarching goals, as well as a number of other things to rank and rate each project and come up with a list that really guides staff in our work plan. And then that project list is reviewed periodically to make sure it still matches with the changing priorities of the board and new projects that come up and what might be happening in the community. So the current strategic plan that is in place that was established by this board has outlined the items above as being the top priorities. And so those are something on our minds always as staff whenever we're making decisions in our day-to-day to ensure that these are the items that we're focusing on. And included on that list is advocacy, because it does tend to be a significant item to look at things that maybe aren't even within our bailiwick, but we're advocating on behalf of residents to the province or sometimes to the federal government to try and affect those things. And I'll finish off with one brief slide here on the hospital district, which you do see that in the tax requisition as well. The hospital district is a separate entity from the regional district, but still managed by the same staff. So we operate it. But highlighting on this map, it does have a different boundary than the regional district. It extends further. The boundaries were restructured in 1996. Prior to that, they did match the regional district boundary, but they realigned it to focus it on where people go for their health services. And so it does include town of Creston and areas A, B, and C, half of A and B and C of the Central Kootenay Regional District, and area A of the Columbia Shuswap Regional District and the town of Gold. So a bit broader area and on the larger board. And I'll leave that at that on the hospital district. I'll have a bit more to talk about that when we get to. So yes, anyone have questions on that before we pass it?
Councilor McGuire?
Hey, you mentioned that you need 2/3 majority to increase services. I'm just curious if there's any mechanism for the electorate to remove services within a region after it's already been approved.
Yeah, so on the same basis, the only one service that a council can opt out of unilaterally is the rural land use planning service. Other than that, any amendment to a service area bylaw, or service establishment bylaw, which would include opting out or terminating a service can be done with a vote of 2/3 of the participants. So
Further?
yeah, essentially, if one city municipality would like to opt out of a service, they would need to have 2/3 of the other members vote to permit that.
Any other? All right, keep going.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Carberry. I'm the Protective Services Manager for the Regional District. And as Sean mentioned, I oversee our emergency program, our rural RDEK fire services, as well as our fire contracts. So first off, I just want to do a bit of a good place to start, I guess, is kind of what is emergency management. So I figured it's probably a good place just to make sure we're all on the same page, all have a good understanding of what we're talking about here. So the new Emergency and Disaster Management Act, or commonly known as EDMA, has expanded the scope and focus of emergency management. Historically, response has been the main focus with recovery tied into it. And with the new EDMA legislation, they've adopted the United Nations Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which spreads the focus across all 4 pillars of emergency management. So that's looking at mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Mitigation, just for a quick overview, is the prevention and minimizing disasters by eliminating or reducing hazards. Examples of this is Fire Smart, debris basins for steep creeks that you may have, as well as mitigated works being installed in Cold Spring Creek, which is one that we're working on, and business continuity planning. Preparedness is sort of just basically preparing to respond, coping, and to cope during disasters. So that's developing your emergency plans, identifying hazards, training and exercises, and various courses. Response is, of course, effectively reacting to the disaster. This is the aspect of emergency management that most people are familiar with, and the activities that take place when we have floods or fires or whatever the emergency may be. And it's the evacuations and movement of people predominantly. Recovery, of course, is building back better and stronger and more inclusively after disasters happen. So I just wanted to touch on a few highlights of the new EDMA legislation. There is quite a few changes to this one. As I said, it spans four pillars now. A couple of key ones are the inclusion of Indigenous peoples. So this was a very welcome inclusion and something that we historically have done very well in the East Kootenays. We've gotten along and worked collaboratively and with the First Nations in our area and have had good relationships and do have good relationships. This is also something that won't happen overnight, like continuing to improve these. It's going to take time. It takes a lot of time and effort to build relationships and to build trust. And I'll touch on a project that we're working on a little bit later that is working towards that. The 4-phased framework, the province has officially adopted the Sendai framework, as I mentioned, which is again those 4 pillars. The key thing here is that there's a bigger emphasis on mitigation and preparedness. For every $1 you spend in mitigation work, you save approximately $10 in recovery costs, which really adds up at the end of the day. Another key area is the hazard focus in risk assessments and planning requirements that happen with the new legislation. So we are beginning a regional HRVA project, or a hazard risk and vulnerability analysis for the region. And this is a partnership with 7 of our municipalities, the 4 First Nations, as well as the regional district. This is going to help us prioritize the risks that need to be focused on first. And I'll touch a bit more on this project later as well. And then enhancing response and recovery powers. So new recovery period that allows you to continue using some of the state of local emergency powers for up to 90 days. The state of local emergency is now 14 days now. However, the recovery period will allow us to use some of those powers as needed for a lot longer, and you can renew that 90-day period every 90 days. And then I just also wanted to mention that Chief Booth has been a key leader in transitioning from the old Emergency Program Act to the new EDMA legislation requirements. And we've had a lot of collaboration done over the last couple of years, just working on how we want the emergency program to adapt and continue to support all of our partners in the program going forward. So next is the East Kootenay Emergency Management Program. So this, of course, is our partnership, like I said, with 8 municipalities, our 4 First Nations across the region to provide support and guidance through all phases of emergency management. We do this through grants. So we do different planning activities, cross training, a variety of things. Our regional emergency operations center is in downtown Cranbrook. It functions as the main emergency operations center, or EOC, for the region, and I support of any of our partners that require support throughout an emergency. And then the REACT supports your community. So I think this is just a really important piece to remember. We are an extension of you. So during an emergency, your focus should be on your municipality, your operations during the event, your staff and your families that may be impacted by the event in your community, and of course, the capacity of your fire department and your operations staff. So we are just that extension of you, because Chief Booth may be tied up responding to whatever's happening. Our East Kootenay Emergency Management Duty Officer. So we have a duty officer that carries a phone 24/7, 365. The number is there on the screen. And basically we have someone who's available all the time. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas Eve at 4 o'clock in the morning. If Chief Booth or someone else from the city calls and you need support with an emergency, we have people available. So we have one main person. They will triage the call, figure out what's happening, and then determine what resources are needed in conversation with you, and then we will go forward from there. So that may just be emergency support services being activated for somebody who's been displaced from their home, perhaps a house fire, or it could be something much larger where you're looking at a neighborhood being evacuated. So speaking of evacuations, Voyant Alert. Voyant Alert, along with our is our evacuation notification system. So this is what we use locally in the East Kootenays. It's available to the regional district. It's available to the First Nations, as well as all of our municipal partners. This is how we communicate when there's an evacuation alert, an order, or a recent, and when we need people to move and move quickly. This is subscriber based, so you do need to sign up in advance, and you're able to put a pin on your property or multiple properties if you have a cabin you like to go to or somewhere you like to recreate. And it's geo-targeted, so even if you are not in the area that you put your pin, you will still get a notification if it falls within the polygon for the alert, order, or recent. And I just want to do a quick plug to make sure that you and your families are also registered for this. It's super important, and it's worth checking once a year just to make sure nothing's changed. Make sure the settings are still the same. My phone personally will silence things if I haven't used an app in a while, so it's always worth checking, especially pre-response season.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's been quite good. Do you have numbers by chance? So next, I just wanted to touch on emergency management in BC and just a little bit of the structure. So the first one here is Incident Command, sometimes also commonly known as the Department Operations Center, or a DOC. So this is where each municipality, First Nation, or community in the region kind of sits. Your focus on responding to the incident, be it a wildfire, a flood, what have you. This is where you have, your staff, your operations staff, your fire department with boots on the ground, working on the emergency. Your administration at this point would be focused on business continuity, ensuring that the city can continue to provide services to the residents and navigate any impacts to those services as the event unfolds. The second layer is the Regional Emergency Operations Center. So this is the EOC that's in Cranbrook with our emergency management team, who are here to support you through whatever the event happens to be. We have a core EOC team that will activate, and the ability to pull in additional staff from within the RDEK itself, as well as across the region. This is where we lean on our partners within the ECAMP program. Could be yourselves if the emergency is somewhere else, or yourselves, depending on if you have staff available during an event that's affecting you. The EOC is here to support you in navigating the province, so the EMCR ministry, for funding, for sourcing of equipment, and requesting additional resources as required. We can also help with coordinating messaging and ensuring that we have a regional approach to things, because rarely do emergencies impact just one community. And then we'll also make recommendations and provide guidance on how to navigate various aspects of our response. We're not here to dictate how you choose to manage your city or your emergency. The REOC is just an extension of you, and we just add to your capacity. In an ideal EOC activation, we would have some of your staff embedded in our EOC in Cranbrook, a liaison position, perhaps a finance person, and communications would all be tied in together so we can coordinate and make sure that we have everything ready for submitting claims to the province and whatnot for the response. The next level up is the PREOC, which is the Provincial Regional Emergency Operations Center. So for us, we have one in the southeast. This is located in Nelson. They sometimes merge depending on how busy wildfire season is with the Kamloops or Central office. And they essentially, when we need funding, when we need resources that we don't have locally, they help us source those. The next layer up is the PEC. It's the Provincial Emergency Coordination Center. And so they coordinate the needs of the 6 PREOCs that are around the province. So they ensure that they can get funding or resources or whatever have you, and they advocate either moving it through the province or getting it from the federal government. And then the 5th layer, of course, is the Public Safety Canada. So for this one, I just wanted to explain sort of how Kimberly and the Emergency Operations Center kind of interact during an emergency. So the REOC director oversees the EOC operations and connects with the CAOs and policy group, which we'll get into the policy group in just a couple minutes. The REOC director, which is most often me right now, if not me, it'll be another manager. We don't have staff to fill this role. They don't generally oversee other staff during normal operations. So it's not something we want to add to somebody in an already stressful environment and just make their day more complex and more complicated. We also have a deputy director in this position. Often we use this for training. It's a great opportunity for that. And we've brought in other managers for that role. But this is also a great position if we had a community that we were supporting, if they wanted to send somebody down, one of their senior leaders or managers to come down and fill in that role. And then depending on the experience level of that person who comes down, they can either be the director or the deputy director. And whoever's in the director role will ensure that they're supported. And that really just comes down to the circumstances that are happening and the comfort level of the person. The liaison is a community representative, and this would be a staff member that you select. So you can have whoever you choose to come down, and they support collaboration between the EOC and Kimberly itself. The liaison is meant to be more of an operational liaison versus the policy group piece, which is more at the strategic level. You can have both a liaison and a deputy director, or you can have one, or you can have none. It really depends on what your capacity is at the time. We can fill those gaps. We will always make sure we're communicating with you, and whatever is needed, we'll fill that gap. And then each of the sections, in particular information, operations, planning, and logistics, as well as finance, can be expanded or contracted depending on the needs of the incident. So under operations, we might have an engineering branch, we might have a fire branch, ambulance branch. There's a whole bunch of different pieces there. All of the other sections have subsections as well. And then the incident commander, which would typically be fire department, it may be chief booth, it could be someone from engineering or operations, will connect through the EOC through the operations section, but also in tandem with the liaison. So during an emergency, I just wanted to touch on the role of the CAO. So the liaison, there would be the liaison between the policy group and the EOC director. They're a non-voting member of the policy group. They attend the policy group meetings and ensure a record of decisions. They make recommendations to the policy group as required. They can act as the deputy EOC director. And they also set priorities for the local government, so within the city of Kimberley, to allow work to focus on the emergency itself. Obviously, there's lots of competing priorities. Emergencies come up at the most inopportune times. And so you need somebody who's able to reprioritize for people so they feel like they can focus where they need to. The role of the policy group itself. So the policy group consists of the local elected officials and the chief administrative officers, and is established when the EOC is activated. They provide policy direction to the EOC. The statement's a little bit misleading as it makes it sound like you need to be making decisions for the EOC on a regular basis. You don't. Between the provincial policy and guidelines and legislation that's laid out, as well as our East Kootenay Emergency Management Program plans and your city plans, those decisions and procedures that we follow in emergencies are typically already predetermined. They're already decided. It's just figuring out where we're getting the resources that we need. An example I do like to give on policy direction that could come up is around hotel accommodations and tourism versus evacuees. So you could, under a state of local emergency, opt to remove tourists from local hotels so that an evacuee has a place to go, or evacuees. This obviously has a lot of impacts on tourism and the local economy. So it's not something that the EOC would ever make on its own. It's something that would need to be decided at the elected official level. Additional roles that the policy group holds or plays is formally requesting support from a higher level of government. So we were having challenges navigating the province. If they were not cooperating well during a response, we may come to you and ask for your support in advocating up through your chains as well. One of the main things that you'll be doing as part of the policy group is the declaration of a state of local emergency, doing extensions for those, as well as evacuation alerts and orders. And then the members of the policy group will differ depending on the locations and circumstances. So if we're looking at a single jurisdiction, the event affects only one community or one municipality. It would be the mayor, full council, and CAO. If it affects an electoral area, we'd be looking at the board chair, vice chair, the elected area director, as well as our CAO. And then multiple jurisdictions. This is the most common type that we see. Like I mentioned earlier, emergencies don't respect boundaries. They do what they're going to do. They happen where they're going to happen. So in the event that we have a multi-jurisdictional event, we'll be looking at a mayor and one councillor from each municipality and or First Nation, as well as the board chair and the area director for the regional district. And then of course the CAOs. Declaring a state of local emergency, this is just an important one to know, provides local authorities with extraordinary powers. These powers may at times infringe upon people's rights and the freedom of its citizens. And a SOL is not something to be taken lightly. It must be thoroughly considered before a decision is made. Generally, we only declare a SOL when we need to evacuate residents in order to protect them from an impending hazard. SOLs must be renewed every 14 days and should be removed as soon as it's safe to do so. So looking at the different types of evacuations, alerts, orders, and rescinds. An evacuation alert is simply issued when by authorities when there's a potential threat to public safety, and residents should be prepared to evacuate if an evacuation order is issued. An evacuation alert does not require immediate action or evacuation, but it does advise residents to be ready to leave their homes at a moment's notice. An evacuation order is issued by authorities when there is an immediate threat to public safety and life, and residents are required to leave their homes immediately. Evacuation orders are usually issued in the event of a disaster such as a wildfire or flood, or a man-made disaster such as a chemical spill or industrial accident. Rescind, of course, is once the event is over, the hazard has been contained, it's safe for people to return home. And I just want to flag the SOL required is only required at the evacuation order portion. If you're just doing an alert, that is not needed. And then I just wanted to touch on a couple of projects that we have going on in the region. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we're doing a hazard risk and vulnerability analysis. We're about to award the contract actually this week. And so this hazard risk and vulnerability analysis, or HRVA, will have a strong focus on climate change. And the project is looking at how climate change will impact existing hazards or if it will create or remove existing ones. We have a shared hazard profile regionally, where most of the region is facing the same hazard risks. So it makes sense to collaborate on this project. Also recognizing that each community is unique and will face risks that are specific to them. Part of the HRVA project is developing an appendix for each partner that will essentially be a self-contained HRVA. So you'll have the piece that informs the whole region, but you'll also have the piece that you can pull out of it that is specific to you. And it just really ensures that all of our HRVAs work together. They're all the same format. So it makes sense when we're looking at a larger scale risk assessment, how they all kind of fit together. It's hard when you're looking at apples and oranges, depending on who the consultant is. So having it all done the same way will be super beneficial. I've said this a few times already, but hazards know no boundaries, and emergency management does not work well in silos. It works much better when we're all talking to one another and working together. It's rare for a natural hazard to only impact one community. And then the other project that we're working on, that is one I'm particularly excited about, is the Indigenous Liaison. So with the EDMA legislation, it requires Indigenous engagement across all phases and pillars of emergency management. And this is required by all local authorities, but is not a requirement of any of the First Nations. We have 8 municipalities and 1 regional district that all need to collaborate and consult with our First Nations partners in the region and the Ktunaxa Nation. And our First Nations partners, as well as the local authority staff, have all shared concerns about capacity and the ability to actually do this work meaningfully and effectively. Collectively, we all got together when the province provided their funding allocations for this work. It's the Indigenous Engagement Requirement Grant. And so collectively, it was super important for all partners to meet the legislated requirements in a meaningful way that did not just tick a box. We've heard loud and clear from our First Nations partners that the tick box approach is performative and insulting, and that is the last thing that we want to do is insult our partners. So when the Indigenous Engagement Requirement funding was allocated, we got together to come up with a meaningful plan that would meet the requirements, but more importantly, build on existing relationships. We determined that the best use of funds to support these goals was to pool them and hire an Indigenous liaison position. That was through multi-year funding with the multiple years of funds, allocation funds that we've got. We should have probably 3 to 4 years worth of salary available from that. And that person is regional. So they will be supporting, they'll be hired by the regional district. They'll be reporting to me, but they will be supporting all of our partners. And then this was also new, multi-jurisdictional emergency management organizations, or MJMOs. This is a new piece in the EDMA legislation. And basically it was the province recognizing regional programs. They've seen a lot of value in that. And so they wanted to try and formalize a way to utilize those. So there's a number of regional programs similar to ours across the province. Under the old legislation, these regional models were, again, not formally recognized and understood well. But over the years, regional models have gained momentum and recognition for their effective coordination and collaboration during response. Emergencies rarely respect boundaries, and it makes far more sense to work together when we're facing the same incident. The province selected 4 regional districts with established emergency management programs recognized for their success. And these RDs were invited to participate on an MJEMO Tech Team Committee. We were one of those ones that was selected, which was fantastic. And we were also asked to invite one of our municipalities and one of our First Nations partners as well. Chief Booth was the first person who came to mind for me, as he's been putting a tremendous amount of work into Kimberley's EM program and collaborating with my team and I to ensure our plans complement each other. We've been working through the legislation to determine gaps and discuss how the ECAMP program can evolve with the new legislation to ensure that our partners are supported. And so the 3 of us that are on the provincial tech team are, of course, Regional District, City of Kimberley, and ACAM. ACAM was selected as both the ECAMP program and Kimberley Fire supported ACAM during the 2023 St. Mary's River wildfire, and it was a good opportunity to really highlight how well we were able to support each other in this event. Any questions? Mayor McCormick?
Thanks very much for the presentation, Christina. Emergency services just set a new record for acronyms. I think we're going to need a cheat sheet on what all of that is.
Yeah, cheap.
Sure, that doesn't hurt, Chief. Huh? Reputation precedes me. Good evening. My name is Kevin Patterson. For those that you don't know me, forever a Kimberley resident, and so it's always a pleasure to come and speak to you. I'm the general manager of environmental and engineering services, and just going to take you kind of on a bit of a 10,000 foot level trip or journey this evening, just to introduce you to some of the programs and services that we provide at the regional district, some which you're a part of and some which you're not, and hopefully address any questions that you might have. And as Mayor McCormick was quizzing, we'll go through some of the elements and how we pay for them. Oopsie. I'll go the other way. Here we go. So like all of our programs, of course, we're governed by provincial regulations, both federally and provincially. And you've heard many of the waste management regulations, contaminated site regulations. And just to comment on that in particular, in that over the last number of years, we've seen a significant transition and change in terms of the downloading legislation and responsibilities onto local governments. And so it's really changed our work world in terms of things that we historically did. And now the reporting, the monitoring, the tracking, the inspections that are self-inspections that were typically done previously by the province and other agencies, now we do through consultants and on our own. So it's really changed the dynamics of our business world. Apart from both provincial and federal regulations and legislation, we also have a number of guiding documents that help drive our programs. And I'm speaking specifically to the solid waste service we provide. One of the key elements was we undertook a solid waste management plan, which was a legislative requirement. Our first one was done in 2020. We had it completed and submitted to the ministry. And that really it was after an extensive period of time where we had a lot of input from our residents and users of our system and the public. And we created a high level solid waste management plan that we've been following and working on the last 5 years. It sets out some primary goals and objectives that we want to achieve and accomplish. And interestingly enough, we are just currently undergoing a 5-year review of that program this year. And it's a moment in time where we'll step back, review what we've done and see what kind of progress we're making. In addition, as CEO Tomlin talked about, the board priority projects help drive some of our work. And obviously the regional sustainability plan is foundational in some of the decision-making processes when it comes to managing solid waste. So again, just to recap quickly, the regional district, we operate 7 urban transfer stations, fully staffed transfer stations, 15 rural transfer stations. Those are unstaffed, open 24/7, 365. We operate 3 landfills. And as was mentioned in CEO Tomlin's presentation, that we break our regional district into 3 subregions, the Columbia Valley, Central, and Elk Valley. So those are 3 distinct budgets, as was also mentioned. And so again, the costs associated with each of those subregions and the revenues generated stay within those subregions, the 3 separate budgets. And quite honestly, I know Christine and I compete for the largest budgets in the regional district. Solid waste was typically the largest budget. Now they like all the fancy fire trucks. So I think she's capped that position here more recently. So just quickly, and again, at a 10,000 foot level, just to make you aware that as residents in the city of Kimberley, you're part of the central subregion solid waste. So as was mentioned, and Holly's going to talk about the tax requisition, those funds don't just fund your Kimberley transfer station. They fund all of these services that I'm going to share with you, as does everybody contributes to that. So in the central subregion, as I said, we've got 11 unattended transfer stations everywhere from Sheep Creek all the way around to Newgate. And these are sites that are serviced daily. We have staff that visit each of those sites every day during the week to clean up, keep tidy. And then we have a contractor that provides collection services at all of those locations and takes it to our landfill. As I spoke about the two in the central subregion, the two primary staff transfer facilities, Cranbrook Transfer Station and of course our Kimberley Transfer Station. Just want to note quickly, only place in British Columbia, our facilities open 360 days a year. We're closed 5 days a year, which is extremely rare across the province. Just quickly, this is an aerial shot of our central sub-regional landfill, which is just outside of Fort Steele at the top of the hill going down in Fort Steele. And I do apologize because I had an updated one, but the numbers are generally holding. The good news is our numbers about the same area, about 48,000 to 47,000 tons of material we manage annually on site, of which about 35,000, 36,000 tons get buried of that waste annually. Now, just a footnote here, it also includes 8,300 tons of waste on average that we receive from the Elk Valley as well. There is no landfill in the Elk Valley. That's a separate subregion. So the municipal solid waste that comes from the Elk Valley into our central subregion, the Elk Valley residents pay us a tipping fee. When I say pay us, it pays us residents in the central subregion. So we do generate revenue from the Elk Valley residents by accepting their waste in our landfill. Just to give you, I always like to show these because I think we have some of the most picturesque landfills in the province of British Columbia. This is our central landfill site. I talked about the legislation changing more recently, and the province now regulates us in such that any landfill expansion, so when we expand and create a new cell to receive waste, must now be lined with a poly liner, and we need to capture any leachate that's generated, and we line that facility to capture that runoff, and then we have to treat it or process it before dispensing it. Now, this is our first expansion that was done under the new regulations. It's about a $2 million expansion, and will be, of course, our next one will be exponentially more and more expensive as time goes by. So we're very, very cognizant in terms of trying to put as little waste in that landfill as we possibly can. It helps us not only in our expansion costs, but it helps us long-term in not having to create, develop another landfill in the future. So really, as I said at the outset, it's really changed the way we've done business in terms of increasing the cost to our residents. We really focus a lot on diversion programs, and any of you who've been to the Kimberley Transfer Station know that we have a lot of opportunities for recycling and diverting products from our landfill. The solid waste management plan identified that we should seek partnerships and try to expand our diversion programs. And where there's gaps, we look to see what kind of we've part of our solid waste management plan review. We looked at our garbage that was going into the landfill. We identified what categories of waste, and then that helps us decide where do we need to pursue some diversionary programs to reduce that. So this is just a sample of some of the services that or partners that we work with in order to minimize the waste that's going into the landfill. This is a recap of our yellow bin program. Many of you are familiar with our yellow bin program. It's been here in these Kootenays for 20 plus years. It's free accessible to the public for the recyclables. And I'll update my comments on our yellow bin program. We've been directed by our board is to transition away from the yellow bin program. Because we've now incorporated the Recycle BC program, which is a recycling scheme whereby we as residents in these Kootenays are paid by Recycle BC for every ton of recyclable that we collect. So between let me just speak specifically about the green bins at the Kimberley Transfer Station, the cardboard and the container bins and the flexible packaging. We are paid on average about $300 a ton for that material that we collect through that system. Conversely, we're paying in excess almost $400 per ton on collectibles through the yellow bin program. So the Yellow Bin program is not part of the Recycle BC program. That's our own homegrown program. And so we're really trying to drive our residents to using the Recycle BC program, which City of Kimberley's done a phenomenal job in doing the curbside program. That material is not going in our yellow bins. We're not paying to get rid of that. I know the municipality is being compensated by participating in that program. And we also are being paid for our recyclables that go through the recycle bins at the Kimberley transfer station. So all that to say, we are transitioning out of the yellow bin program. The focus, the challenge for us is that the yellow bin program is primarily, we're trying to provide just a service to our business community. But we're looking at other models to provide that service to the business community in an effort to reduce that cost to our taxpayers. So my take-home message is encourage, all residential users to use the transfer station, the RBC program. Please use your curbside. That's the best service that we have. And again, that helps reduce that tax burden substantially. So there will be work over the next couple of years as we try to phase out the yellow bin program. I'm not going to spend any time on this other to note that I talked about our waste analysis, about 35% of it we identified as organics. And I know I've worked with your staff here locally and was instrumental in your curbside organics program. And I've got some really, really good news in terms of the volume of organics that we're receiving from the City of Kimberley and the reduction in waste that we're receiving at the landfill has been remarkable. In fact, if I remember correctly, about 422 tons last year of organics we collected, reducing the waste going into the landfill. So a really, really good news story there. This is just a quick snapshot. We're just doing some testing, piloting at the Central Landfill. That's where our organics facility is located, of which this is your material that has gone to the Kimberley landfill, and we're starting to process that. Just as far as an update, we are working with a local contractor to come up with an operational program here, and we're starting to do some testing on our new facility just to get a feel for how that works, and that's kicking off here in June. Any questions specifically to the solid waste side?
Councillor Keynes?
Thanks for the presentation. I'm wondering with the end use of the organics, and also be interested in seasonal differences. If you notice, that it really drops off in the wintertime and picks up in the spring.
Yeah, certainly. And because we're just getting rolling now, we are cognizant that there is going to be some seasonality to the material. We still don't know if we're going to be able to compost full year throughout the winter months as well. Well, certainly at our central location, we don't have power, so we've got a solar system that operates that. So the demand for power to run blowers in the winter, the icing, we've got a lot of challenges and things to sort out there in terms of the operational program. I can tell you right now, it's yard and garden. And I'm sure your collectors are seeing that at the curbside. We're seeing a lot of yard and garden spring cleanup. The household volume maintains pretty consistent. The kitchen catcher volume is pretty consistent throughout the year. It doesn't fluctuate a whole lot. It's more with the yard and garden. So we're going to see some seasonality, and we'll figure that system out. We are only producing a Class B compost for now at our landfill. So that material, quite frankly, we can use every ounce that we produce at the landfill. We can use for our final closure, again, which would help reduce costs to our taxpayers. But we'll see what sort of volumes we've got available. It is Class B, so we would not be able to sell it back to individuals for market gardens or anything of that nature. But for landscaping or green spaces, it may be applicable.
Okay. Councillor McBain?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I noticed on the distribution of waste that you had up there, I think it was 5% were textiles. And I know traditionally that's been a difficult thing to manage. Have there been any advancements in how to deal with or recycling or any types of programs that would reduce the amount of textiles put into landfills, just given the fact that a lot of them have a lot of polyesters and other types of plastics in them that are outside of just your cotton blends and that type of thing. So have there been any advancements on the textile recycling front?
Thank you, Councillor McBain. Yeah, there has been in other locales. It certainly is difficult for us, and I'm being really candid when I say, although we bury 34,000, it seems like a lot of tonnage to us. 5% of that, it's not a huge volume, and so we don't have those opportunities for us here locally for that kind of. It's not necessarily the low hanging fruit. It's the difficult material, but there are certainly in the bigger centers, there are some EPR programs. There's nothing established in British Columbia specific to textiles. One that doesn't really relate, but kind of relates to your question is, I know the province is looking at an EPR program for mattresses. So that's looking to be legislated here in the coming by 2026, 2027. We're hopeful. We're being progressive here in these Kootenays. We do have a mattress recycling program. As you know, you can't take them to Kimberley, but you can take them to Cranbrook. So we are taking those to Calgary and processing those mattresses to get that, and they break that material out. So they're taking the foam, the fabric, and the springs and the wood out of those and doing some dismantling. So it is coming.
Councillor Dennebeck?
I'm kind of curious about the cell expansion. It's awesome that it's all being contained now and we're thinking there. Is this kind of system stackable? Like, can you essentially build a cell upon a cell, Calf Creek? Sort of to reference, I don't know if it's the exact same, but like, just to keep densified. So more space, like essentially build a map that can facilitate.
Yeah, great, Councillor Dennebeck. Good question. We have a fair bit of space for our current landfill. We do go up. So there's not necessarily another layer of liner, but we do that liner is designed to capture all of the waste that we build in that final profile of the landfill. And then we'll put in gas capture and any leachate capture if there's any moisture coming off that. One of the key distinctions, I think, and it's important to share with our group here, is that our solid waste that we do bury, it's in a tomb. So there is virtually no breakdown to that garbage. So if we went back 100, 200 years from now, that landfill's profile is it will slump, but it's pretty much going to retain itself. And we've opened up landfills, even the old Kimberley landfill, where we've dug it in and you can find that Mars bar wrapper, looks like the day it went in. So we don't have a lot of we have what's called a dry cellar or dry landfills. That's why we don't accept liquids in our landfill, contrary to the lower mainland, where they would have huge composition, huge methane production because of the moisture and decomposition that occurs. Ours are essentially a tomb and they're very, very dry. So yeah, so we don't get a lot of, more to the point, that's why we're trying to put in, I guess I call it good garbage, in that we're keeping out the organics, we're keeping out the liquids. So all that we're burying is the garbage, and we're putting it in a tomb, and that's where it'll stay. So it has minimal impact, has no runoff, nothing going off the site. How are we doing, everybody? Okay, I'm going to go really quickly to the next. I know there's a couple more. And again, just to carry on that same theme, within my department of solid waste, we also operate recreation control services. So we have a number of categories of different parks and services, regional parks and trails. These are regional parks that we all pay for. Again, in the city of Kimberley, we are all contributing, our taxpayers are contributing to these regional parks. So we have the Wycliffe, kind of our flagship park is the Wycliffe Regional Park, Wycliffe Exhibition Grounds, the Elk Valley Regional Park, Tie Lake, Old Coach, the boat launch, and to some, not Kimberley specific, but a Markham MacPhail. I'm just going to go through these very quickly, just to give you, in case you're not aware of these parks that you're a part of, and that they're truly a gem in the Kootenays. Wycliffe Regional Park, as I said, is kind of our gem. Interestingly, we just opened We will be opening 20 campsites this summer, first time. So we have 10 that are opening on the 15th and then another 8 or 10 by the end of the month. So it's just for small car camping, a few pull-through sites. So we're really excited about that, along with our 18-hole disc golf course, which really has become popular and is on the circuit apparently. The exhibition grounds, of course, across the road as well. Just an interesting note, we do host a lot of weddings and other events and family gatherings at that facility, not just the rodeo. So we have those facilities are available, bookings for our residents. The Elk Valley Park, again, a real gem. If you've ever gone between Sparwood and Elkford, it's right along the highway, a little unknown gem that a lot of people don't know exists. And again, it's a regional park. Ty Lake, great swimming hole at Ty Lake, lots of swimming and walking trails are there. The Old Coach Greenway, which runs from just outside of Invermere, goes from Radium to Invermere, Dry Gulch, 8 or 9 kilometer non-motorized trail, just stunning views over the Columbia wetlands. The Markham McPhail West Side Legacy Trail runs from the Hoodoos all the way on the west side up to Invermere. It's a paved trail. It's not a rail trail. It's got some dynamic sections in there as well. It is, as I said, paved, and however, that is funded through Area F and G in the Columbia Valley. So specifically fund that particular, certainly a worthwhile experience. The Yakaklamki boat launch down at Lake Koocanusa, again operated by all of us in the central subregion. We contribute to that. User fees to launch here, extremely popular during the summer. And then we have electoral area, and these are specific to the electoral areas, the rural areas. And again, these are not contributed to by the municipality, but we do manage and maintain these parks. And you can see there's a vast array of parks and services that we provide there. We also, little known fact, we also operate the Sparwood, or the Elk Valley Regional Airport, soon to be called Patterson International. But it's a small airstrip that's got hangars and access for those residents in the Elk Valley. And then a mosquito control program, which is funded exclusively through a service area in the Wasatata Creek area. And we manage that mosquito control contract for those residents in that community. And I shouldn't probably mention it in here, Mayor McCormick, the Eddie Mountain Memorial Arena against we are good dynamiters, but the Eddie Mountain Memorial Arena, which is downtown Invermere. A lot of people don't realize that the regional district owns and operates that in downtown Invermere. And lastly, our invasive plant control program. We have 2 employees that we provide extension services to our member municipalities and in the region. Through a bylaw, we can enforce the Provincial Weed Act, which encourages landowners to be responsible for their invasive plants. But in addition to enforcing the Weed Act, we also provide extension services. So we'll meet with homeowners, we meet with individuals, provide them information about weed control, how to deal with it, and provide them support. We also have a neighborhood funding program where people find a weed infestation they were unaware of. We've got a little bit of financial support that we can help them start to get it under control. To help kick things off for them. That's the neighborhood basically. In a whirlwind. Any other questions, Parks and Rec?
Council, any questions? Councilor McGuire.
Just a question around the invasive plants. It's just kind of question in my mind around, like, I believe the city of Kimberley has their own contract for invasive plants, and then there's the Rails to Trails that hires it, and then there's now Nature Park looking at a management plan for the nature park. And I'm just kind of curious how that all fits together, and whether there's efficiencies around, regional invasive species management.
Thank you, Council. Good question. Yeah. As I said, we kind of base our program under the Provincial Weed Act. So that helps us all collectively kind of prioritize which species we're targeting. As you know, there's a wide range and there's various impacts depending on where you are in the province. Certain weeds are more abundant than others. So collectively, we work with EKISC as well. So EKISC works in partnership with the provincial agencies on Crown land. They coordinate the highways, for example. Any of the Crown land infestations, they help manage that. Our program is primarily focused with private landowners. And so we do collaborate with those those other groups to, again, make sure we're working on the same priority weed species and sharing resources amongst as well. So you can appreciate if we got Crown land that's working on a particular weed challenge or issue in an area, then we can assist by working with the landowners that are adjacent and enforcing the Weed Act and say, no, you have an obligation to help here and control it. And vice versa, if we have a homeowner that's fighting in a particular invasive species that we've enforced the act on, then we work with EKIS to ensure that those Crown agencies are also supporting them. So it's trying to, again, back to that recognizing we don't recognize a boundary there. So working together.
Thanks, Kevin. Good evening. I'm Michelle Bates. I'm the General Manager of Development and Protective Services, so responsible for planning, building, compliance, and I work alongside Christina in the Protective Services Department. I have been involved in land use in one way or the other. First half of my career, I was actually working for an engineering firm, and I was basically the agent or the consultant that did a lot of the development. So Dreamcatcher was one of my very first. So if you like Dreamcatcher, that was one of my first. If you don't, well, it was just one of my first. So I got better. And then this last 17, 18 years, I've been with the regional district for the majority of it in the planning department. So land use is very near and dear to me. It's something I think is really important. And anytime I have a microphone, I'm always going to take a second to talk about why we plan. I'm no longer invited to talk at weddings, but I'm here tonight. So why do we plan? So I'm sure we can all think of developments or examples that are poorly sited, projects that don't have the necessary parking or maybe the infrastructure that's required. They've impacted wetlands, forests. They're in places that are prone to hazard, things like that. We do require housing. We require farmers, education, opportunities for recreation, preservation of our agriculture, transportation corridors. So long-term and short-term planning, such as OCP, official community plans and zoning bylaws, provide those guidelines and the policies to accommodate the needs in our communities in an orderly manner. While houses must be built for an increasing population, maybe a wetland or an area that's unsuitable is not the most desirable place. So electoral area planning. So the purpose is to manage development on private lands in unincorporated areas. So it's the same legislation and tools used by the municipalities. It's the Local Government Act that is legislated. However, we do have some differences. We are not the approving authority for subdivision. As well, the Agricultural Land Commission, Crown Land, and lake management decisions are also not within the authority of the RDK. Participants in cost sharing. So this is the one service that Otamala mentioned earlier that a municipality can opt out of. The electoral area, all electoral areas are mandatory to participate in this service. So that's 6 directors representing our electoral areas. And then the municipal participation is optional via an agreement. So currently all the municipalities have opted in and the agreements expire in December of 2028. The cost for that is a fixed cost. It's based on 25% of the assessment in 2023. And this allows 1 vote per director on Part 14 and related Part 14 planning related functions. So official community plan decisions, land use bylaws, development permits, temporary use permits, any decision that's made at our planning committee table, along with our advisory planning commission and the fees that are associated with those applications. But the municipal director has the full funds. The costs range from about $4,500 in Canal Flats up to over $100,000 for the city of Cranbrook, and the city of Kimberley is at about $1,909 for this. So long-range planning. So currently we have 15 official community plans. We also have lake management plans. These were developed by the RDK in collaboration with other municipalities, First Nations, and various stakeholders. The purpose of these plans are to provide a decision-making framework to ensure the future health of our lakes, the need of recreational users, protection of cultural values, and to realize economic opportunities on the lakes. Again, this is a multi-jurisdictional management when it comes to the lakes. We're not the final approving authority for the decision. We also have sustainability plan. Our OCPs contain policies regarding sustainability, as well as we have a climate action plan that we'll be adopting this summer. Columbia Valley Active Transportation Plan, and we've also partnered with BC Hydro to contract a community energy manager. What we're working on right now, we're updating our Elk Valley official community plan. We're updating our Rocky View official community plan. What we're trying to do now, right now is, again, with 15 official community plans, is every time we update a plan, we try and consolidate other OCPs within the adjacent areas to try and get us down to a lot less official community plans and zoning bylaws. I think a municipality, you will have one of each. You can imagine the work it takes to update these if there's a big amendment that needs to happen to all of them. Auxiliary dwelling units, ADU, that's another project we'll be working on this summer. So while the RDK met all the legislative requirements in Bill 44, we still want to be proactive. And this is an opportunity to look at our land use policies and see if we can't increase the density on some of our residential lots. What that looks like right now, we're not sure. We're going to reach out to the community and see what their tolerance is for that increase in density, what type of auxiliary dwelling they're looking at, we're hoping for. We're also working on the Fairmont Hazard Guidance Project. So we are hoping to develop policies that can guide development and land use in the identified hazard area around Spotsbury and increase the community awareness and understanding of the debris flow and debris flow hazards associated with Gold Spring Creek and Fairmont Creek. We also have an active transportation plan for the Columbia Valley that we're working on. That's going to provide some strategic direction to network the region with municipalities and the other adjacent communities. Current planning, so 15 long-range plans, we have 8 zoning bylaws and 1 land use bylaw. So the majority of the RDK is zoned, with the exception of the area around Elko. We also have floodplain management bylaws for all areas, including for unzoned areas. These bylaws specify construction regulations in floodplain areas to help reduce future exposure to flood risk. Each zoning bylaw has sign regulations, except for the Elk Valley, which has its own standard sign bylaw. We also have a campground bylaw that was adopted in 2012 that applies to all areas, including unzoned areas. And we have a mobile home park bylaw. So current planning and decision making, as I mentioned earlier, the RDK is not always the approving authority for all land use applications. The board is the decision maker for zoning, OCP amendments, DVPs, development variance permits, housing agreements, temporary use permits, and floodplain exemptions. Other agencies such as the Agricultural Land Commission, the Ministry of Transportation and Transit is the approver for subdivisions. Staff has been delegated to approve wildfire, environmentally sensitive areas, shoreline, form and character development permits, as well as short-term rentals. Our temporary use permits for short-term rentals can be delegated to staff as well, as long as they're complying with the approved policies. And we have a board of variance. So a property owner can apply to a board of variance. The person believes that compliance with the zoning or subdivision servicing bylaw would cause them hardship. The board of variance consists of 1 member from each electoral area, and the planning manager is the secretary for the board. These are our current planning applications. So we keep track monthly of all our applications received by type and by electoral area. So in 2023, we had 417 applications. 2024, we had 263 applications. So far, we're already in May. It's been a very busy few months. These applications don't include our short-term rental applications. Those are tracked separately. We also keep track of our telephone and counter inquiries, which averages about 3,500 to 4,000 inquiries yearly in the planning department. We also have sustainability initiatives, so greenhouse gas emission reduction, green policy development, as well as the community manager that I mentioned earlier, Megan Lohman. So this is a partnership between the RDK and BC Hydro. to provide resources to engage East Kootenai communities to reduce energy consumption. So the initiatives there have been Accelerate Kootenai, which is a strategy to build a clean transportation network through EV charging stations. There's also been a lot of work on STEP Code, on builder education and engagement there. And we have, currently we're working on a retrofit program and as well as the organic waste diversion project. We have a lot of special projects that we work on as well. So there's the Kootenai Recreation Steering Committee. That's a partnership between the province, Tinoha, the RDK, and Columbia Basin Trust. Kootenai Boundary Farmer Advisors, which is a free service provided to our producers with the goal of providing education and support. And that is also a partnership between Columbia Basin Trust, the Regional District of East Kootenai, Central Kootenai, and Kootenai. Columbia Lake Eastside Partnership, that's a partnership between Tinoha Nation, Kiskana, Shuswap Band, Nature Conservancy, Nature Trust, the RDK, and the province to develop a stewardship vision for the Columbia Lake Eastside. Columbia Valley Community Economic Development Officer, this is a contract with Pete Moore based out of the Columbia Valley. And again, representation from, it's also run by an advisory committee that has representation from Shuswap, Kiskana, Columbia Valley directors, Columbia Valley Chambers of Commerce, and community members. The goal here is to serve the Columbia Valley communities by working with these partners and prospective businesses to create a diverse and resilient economy. And the regional parks and trails. So as Kevin mentioned, we have a lot of parks and trails. And so the planning department works alongside the environmental department to create parks plans that basically outline what opportunities could be at the parks, what improvements that would be at the parks. And then all that work is done by a fantastic team I work with. Karen McLeod's a planning manager. We have a senior planner that's currently vacant. We have two junior planners. Sarah's been with us now for about 3 months, and Ryan is starting at the end of this month. We have a senior planning technician, Tracy, and so she works on more comprehensive short-term applications, whereas the planners work on the longer-term, longer-range plans. We have 2 planning technicians for area, one for area A, B, and C, one for area E, F, and G, and they also work on all our short-term applications. We have a development clerk who reviews all the building permits to ensure that they're complying with our zoning bylaws. And we have Alistair, who's our planning assistant, who's responsible for the agendas and basically all admin and keeping track of us and making sure we're all on track and meeting our deadlines. Any questions? Get off the work.
Thanks. You guys are so funny. Which way am I going? Right? Is the this thing? Work on the screen. Okay. Okay. It's a good thing I can describe things well. All right. Well, good Cormac and counselors, thanks for inviting us. I'm wrapping up the presentations tonight. We're going to take everything they said and tell you how it works with finances for the RDK and the Kootenai East Regional Hospital District. And I'll be happy to answer questions at the end. So I did a run through of this. It's pretty long. So I'm going to kind of whip through a couple. And if you want me to slow down or go back to something, just let me know. So we'll start off with what finance does. And so we manage the finances for over 100 services with the RDK. And we process payments for vendors, contractors, the government agencies, and also a lot of grants, Columbia Basin Trust Ready grants, grants from our service budgets, and Community Works Funds grants, and the Columbia Valley Conservation Fund grants as well. And we assist our member municipalities with long-term borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority. And then we collect those payments from the municipalities and remit them to the MFA. So that helps reduce the administration costs for the MFA. And then when a debenture is fully paid, I believe you have one coming up. And so what happens is when the MFA returns the 1% debt reserve to us, we return that to the municipality. And sometimes there's surplus payments on the debentures, which would come through us, and then we would also send those forward to the municipality. We facilitate preparation of the 5-year financial plan for the RDK and Hospital District, and we prepare amendments as needed. We work with auditors for audited financial statements each year, and we complete our legislative reporting. So our audited statements are actually coming to board this week, along with the statement of financial information. And we manage all of the insurance for liability, property, and cyber, and all of the claims. And we run payroll for staff, directors, and call rank firefighters. So depending on the month it is and which pay run we're on, we could process 220 to 320 people for pay in a pay run. And there's 84 RDK staff that are currently full-time, most of them. So as CEO Tomlin mentioned, so the RDK is not a taxing jurisdiction, so we can't collect property taxes on our own. We requisition the province and the member municipalities. So then the member municipalities, for Kimberley, for example, collects those monies for our requisition from the property owners within Kimberley. And so our member municipalities and the province do that within their regions. So we collect it from the property owners and then pay that requisition to us. So one principles for regional districts is that the money in the service stays in the service. So municipalities, you have 3 funds. You have water, sewer, and general for everything else. And I know it's a lot of everything else. Regional district model, each service is its own fund. So we manage over 100. So each has its own budget, its own coding, its own financial report, and its own reserves. So the money is just there. And anything that's left in surplus from the prior year is most often moved into the next year to use to help reduce the taxation. Sometimes we keep that in surplus if we see that we'll have higher costs later on. So it's one of my favorite things. I like all the little tidy little nests of services and money. So that works well for me. So services can include a whole or part of one or more electoral areas, or a combination of municipalities and electoral areas. So when more than one jurisdiction participates in a service, we refer to that as a shared service. And our shared services are mostly what I refer to as our core services. And that's our biggies like solid waste, 911, and regional parks, and some other ones. So the folks that pay taxation for the service are the ones that receive the benefit for that service within the boundary of that service. So unlike municipalities whose due date for taxation is the start of July, we have to wait an extra month. So we get our requisition funds in on August 1st. So we have to keep a very close eye on our cash flow. And sometimes we need to utilize borrowing through a revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw because we've already operated 7 months without any taxation revenue coming in. So it's it can be a little tight. So the budget process is quite extensive. September to December, this is when the staff work together on all of the budgets. So it's all of the shared services and all of the individual services. And then in January, we meet mid-January to the end of January, we meet with our electoral area directors. And with those meetings, we're working on the individual services. So all of the non-shared services within the electoral area, and they're making decisions, and we're working on changing that budget up and getting it in good shape. And in February, we take our budget to public consult. There's where we take it to the budget day, which is the Wednesday before the committee meetings. And we have a variety of meetings, which I will discuss on the next slide. And then we take all those decisions, we wrap her up and we take it out to consultation. And we take the draft financial plan to the Engage page, and we advertise our notices, and we meet with the municipalities within each subregion, and we also meet with some of the societies. So it's quite an extensive process. So we hold a 5 to 6 hour budget meeting with the directors on the Wednesday before the committee meeting in February. And we present the overall draft financial plan, talk about the tax requisitions, and we work on the 24 shared services, budgets for the 24 shared services. And we go over the estimated tax requisition for each service and the overall tax effect for all jurisdictions. And then we'll break out into the meetings for committee the next day, or for the meetings by committee, and we review the shared service budgets relevant to that committee. And the directors have an opportunity to ask questions, suggest changes, and make decisions. So then we take that, and on the Friday after that meeting, all of those decisions get brought forward in board and they get voted on. So then we take all of that, we refluff the financial plan, and we take it again to March, and that's presented as draft 2. It has all the changes, and we also review for the committee meetings for the services if there's items that are left over for decision or new items that came in. We will do that, then get more decisions. That night, we wrap her up into the new financial plan. It comes back to board the Friday in March, and the directors have another chance to make changes. They could change tax requisitions. They could ask for more discussion. So after those changes are made, that's when the financial plan is adopted. So our financial plan has to be adopted by March 31st, which is earlier than May 15th for the municipalities. And the reason for that, for the earlier adoption, is that the tax requisition we provide to the municipalities feeds into the financial plans and the tax rates bylaws for the municipalities. So you need our information as you're working on your own. So the ad valorem tax requisition, which is taxes on assessment, must be sent to the province and the municipalities by April 10th. So we recognize that our member municipalities are working on their own budgets. So we keep them updated as much as we can on the requisition information. And we provide the final requisition to them as quickly as we can once the revised rule comes in. So before we look at the tax requisition for 2025, here's just a summary 2025 with 2024 comparative of the overall financial plan. So property taxes based on the assessment for 2025 have increased 2.32 million. 1.82 million of that is for shared services, and just under 505,000 was for the individual services within the electoral areas. So overall, the tax requisition for shared services is 22.05 million, and the individual services is 6.1 million. The main reason for the shared service increases were the solid waste contracts, E911, ECOM, and dispatch contracts, inflationary increases for the staff, which were at BC CPI as of October of 2024, so 2.7%. Additional staff resources, higher fleet costs, some additional granting, and increases to transfers to reserves for our asset management. Parcel taxes are for individual services within the electoral areas for things like mosquito control and utilities. And the grants in lieu, Elk Valley tax sharing makes up 676,000 of that 917,000. Local government grants and transfers totals 9.7 million, and that includes the municipal debt payments of 4.5 million. We have to include that within the budget. Community Works funds and grants from CBT, UBCM. So the total expenditures for 25 are budgeted at 58.3 million. 4.6 million of that, or sorry, 46.3 million of that's for our operation budget, and just under 12 million is for capital. And this is all of the services in the RDEK. So here's a nifty chart of the 46.3 million for the operating budgets. The operating budget increased by 1.91 million in 2025. 27% of that is for the 3 solid waste subregions, which Manager Patterson reviewed with you with all the various services we have. 1.4 million of that 1.91 million, or 74%, was due to solid waste. So that's a pretty significant number. And the reason for that is that we had, the increases were in contract costs for the landfill operations, hauling, yellow bin, and consulting services for our mandatory reporting. And the reason it went up 74% is we had a bunch of contracts that were expiring, and the new contracts, the proponents were increasing it for the inflationary increase that has happened in the last several years, because they were locked in, hadn't had a chance to catch up. So we know we had really high inflation in a couple of years. So they've added that on. So that was some pretty big increases in these contracts. So this would really be more like 29%, but Protective Services did snag $2 million in grants, which brings the operating budget up. And that made solid waste look lower than it actually would have been. Okay, so as mentioned, the capital budget is just under 12 million. Most projects in the capital budget are not related to the city of Kimberley. I put in the few of them that are. So the Wycliffe Park Campground is just under 318,000 in this financial plan. That's funded 80% by grants, and the rest is coming from a reserve. So there's no effect to the actual taxation. And the organics composting facility is just under 10,000. And that's being funded from the recycling reserve. Okay, I was going to make a drink of water. Did everybody bring a copy of the requisition? So, so one of the biggest reports, I think, in the budget session is our requisition change report. And we provide that to the directors and the public to help explain the taxation for the shared overhead services, which are our core services. So the way it works is you start on the left-hand side. The document shows 14 jurisdictions that contribute to the shared services. Then moving to the right, you can see the requisition for the past 4 years. Go to the right again, you can see the current year requisition. And then further to the right, it shows the variance from the previous year, or what it's also called the requisition increase. So going towards the bottom of that, you can see the requisition increase was 1.82 million overall. And then we break that variance down to show how much of the requisition increase was created by new, and here it says new development. That's the city of Kimberley refers to that as new construction. So that is the new construction that occurs. It's captured with the BC assessment non-market change reports. And so that was for overall 462,000 of the requisition, or 25%, was created from new construction, class changes, that sort of thing. And the remaining requisition increase was 1.3 million. So when we look at Kimberley specifically, Kimberley's apportionment, You can see the shared services you participate in resulted in an overall requisition of 1.2 million. So that went up by just under 99,000. So 26,000 of that, or 27%, is related to the new construction in Kimberley. So the new assessment of the new development absorbs $26,413, and the remaining 72,104 is spread among the existing taxpayers from the prior year. So going to the right once more, you can see that the requisition increase equates to $16 for the average residential property for Kimberley. So when we're doing this tax requisition, I mean, we're talking about the entire RDEK. So we calculate an average assessment for the average property within the whole RDEK boundary, and that's 596,000. Kimberly's, I believe, is less. So you could do the calculation and it would be less than $16. For the overall RDEK, the average increase on the average residential property is $24. So then going to the right once more, you can see the mill rates for the shared services for each jurisdiction. Now, this won't quite match the number that Kimberley has in your tax rates bylaws when it comes through, because the community charter instructs that municipalities use the general assessments from the roll and in their municipal assessments when creating the mill rate. And you have your own multiples. And regional districts were instructed to use the hospital assessments, which is another report from BC Assessment. And we have legislated multiples. So the province tells us, all regional districts, what the multiples are. So we're kind of not calculating it the same way. So it's not going to show the exact same mill rate when you're looking at your tax notice. So going to the right one more time, we provide the total cost of the RDK shared services requisition for each jurisdiction for the average resident. So for Kimberley, that amounts to $273 for the average residential property, valued at $596,000. You can look at the other municipalities to see where their numbers fall. Going down further, you can see the electoral areas. And you can see that the electoral areas, the total cost is much higher than the municipality. And that's because we provide more services to the electoral areas. As I mentioned, 100 services, 24 are shared by everybody, and there's over 80 for the electoral areas. So the number that will appear will be that final one. Yeah, so that's the requisite. That's the calculation that we give. But as I mentioned, because of the different assessment and the different multiples, it's not going to quite line up with that. Yeah, it'll be approximately that. And I think it usually goes like on the bottom of your tax notice. So that and the hospital district. And before I move on, I just want to say that, you know, those numbers are on your tax notices and you collect the funds for us. But it doesn't mean that you have to answer the questions about those taxes. So if someone's in here and they want more information, then just direct them to the regional district, and we are happy to provide any information they're looking for on regional district taxes or hospital district taxes. I know that you folks, especially finance, have enough to deal with taxation. So just throw it on down to us. Okay, so we are going to go further down to the lower left corner of this spreadsheet, and we're going to look at the assessments. So you can see how the taxable assessment for each jurisdiction performed in 2025 compared to 2024. Overall, going to the bottom, overall, the assessment increased 7.3%. And the municipal assessments moving up a bit were overall 8.4%. The electoral area assessments increased 5.9%. So any jurisdiction that had assessment increases of more than 7.3% will see a greater apportionment of tax requisition for the services that they participate in. And anything that's lower will have a lower apportionment of the requisition. They will see a reduced apportionment. So in Kimberley, the average assessment increase was 7.8% compared to the average of 7.3%. So Kimberley's got in their requisition this year, the apportionment's leaning slightly towards Kimberley this year. And that makes up part of your overall assessment. So the assessment increases change and they ebb and flow every year. And some years Kimberley can be lower than the average, although the last several years you have not been. And some years you can be higher. So if you look closer at the jurisdictions in the central subregion, you can see that Kimberley had the lowest increase per average residential property of $16, whereas Area C had the highest, $48. So it all depends on the number of services that each jurisdiction participates in, the tax increase for the services, the new taxable assessment from the new construction, and the assessment performance compared to other jurisdictions. So it's quite complicated. So here are the total requisition amounts for each jurisdiction in 2025 again, but this time with the number of services that the jurisdictions participate in. So you can see the Columbia Valley jurisdictions participate in the most at 22, and Kimberley is at 8 services. The electoral areas, they have all of these shared services, and then on top of that, they have their individual services, such as fire protection, street lighting, water and sewer services. So they have quite a few more. Advancement. Everything died. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we're going to break the requisition down further and look at what the cost per average residential property in Kimberley is for each of the 8 services that Kimberley participates in. So these again are our shared services. You can see general admin at 52, and it runs down through solid waste. And you can see that total $273 was the same number that we were looking at on the assessment spreadsheet. So here's an example of the cost per average residence for electoral area E, which has 17 services. So I've put an asterisk next to each of the services that Kimberley also participates in. And you can see that the cost per average residential is exactly the same. And because they have other services, more services, their average residential is $460. And here's a quick summary of the total RDEK shared services tax requisition per average residential property owner. And in this one, I've broken out solid waste because it's the largest piece of the taxes. So you can see in Kimberley, solid waste is 170 per average residential property. And all of the other services of the shared services are 103 for the total of 273. But you can really see where it's all picking up amongst all of the jurisdictions. And under the solid waste column, you can see what each jurisdiction is paying for in solid waste. So it's following the theme of the solid waste sub-region. Columbia Valley is all the same for their sub-region. Central is the same for their sub-region. And then the Elk Valley is different because the Elk Valley does not apportion solely based on assessment, which Central and Columbia Valley do. The Elk Valley has a formula where assessment is for reserves and debt, and then the rest The operational portion is based on tonnage. And that results in quite a bit of fluctuation within for each municipality for the solid waste. Okay, so I'm checking the numbers. This is a good one. So I apologize again for having to do the amendment of the next 7 slides. So these are the accurate numbers. Last week we were in the interesting position in finance where we were finishing the audit. So some of us were working in 2024 and some of us were working in 2025. And I got the numbers wrong. It's basically what it is. So I thought I would dive into the services that Kimberley contributes to. And before I do that, though, I thought I should explain how the salaries for the RDK work. So the RDK tracks staff time based on actual time spent for each of the 100 services. And we charge those services for wages, benefits, and shared overhead. So shared overhead includes the costs of the RDK office buildings in Cranbrook and the Columbia Valley, computer hardware, software, licensing, office supplies, staff association dues and memberships, some of them, audit fees, photocopier and internet costs, postage. It's a fairly extensive list. It's all pooled into one pot. And then we apportion that out to every single service. So all of the 100 services pay this pooled overhead and it's apportioned by wages, by actual wages. So we're tracking it, actual wages, and we're apportioning it by actual wages. So every service is just paying the amount of wages that were used within that service. So all jurisdictions contribute to general administration. This service is for administration costs that are attributed to general operation of the RDEK. So that's anything that's not charged to other service areas or electoral area admin. So it includes salaries and benefits. There's some grants in there. It also includes the board costs, except for training conferences and memberships of the electoral area directors. And the board costs account for 28% of the operating budget for general admin. So that is 2.82 million. Looking at this now, I wish I had brought the Kimberley portion, what the apportionment for Kimberley is. I did not bring that. So I can provide that to you later if you want to see that. So the cost per average residential property for general admin is $52. And it's the same whether you are in electoral area or in municipality. Okay, so next is 911. The requisition's 586,000. All jurisdictions participate. This one's different because the apportion method is the number of dwellings. So we use the census from 2021 to determine the number of dwellings. And that works out to the average residential property is paying, some are paying $5 and some are paying $18. Because we apportion it by the number of dwellings, that gives us the cost. And then the municipalities, you take that and you run that through your assessments and taxes. So it works out to $5 to $18. So kind of a different way to do it. Solid waste and recycling. So central subregion, which Kimberley is part of, is 4.27 million for the requisition. It's all done by assessed value. And as mentioned, the average residential property cost is $170. So part of tax requisition goes towards reserves like the Central Landfill Closure Reserve, the Kimberley Landfill Closure Reserve, the Recycling Reserve, and the Central Landfill New Cell Reserve. So the cost of landfill closures and subsequent monitoring is very high. The Kimberley landfill, the closure for that is estimated at 6.3 million and estimated to carry it out around 2029. So with the reserves we're putting away through central sub-region, it's not just Kimberley putting into it, it's the whole sub-region going into it. And we will have the funds for that by 2029. The recycling reserve, as Manager Patterson mentioned, we have a portion of tipping fees that come from the Elk Valley for the household or I can't really call it, I call it household waste that they tip here. We take a portion of that and we put that into the recycling reserve. And we use that to fund grants for things like the organics carts that we provided funding for Kimberly and recycle carts. And it's also funding the operating costs of the organics facility. So some good uses for that. So planning, the requisition overall is 1.05 million. And it's based on the calculation of 25% assessment for the municipalities and 100% of assessment for the electoral areas. So 2025, the municipalities are paying $9 on average property, and the electoral areas are paying $34 per average property. Invasive plant management, total requisition just under 100,000, and that works out to $2 on the average residential property, and that is all jurisdictions in the RDK. So we have library grants and aid service, and it provides grants to most libraries in the region. And the tax is based on the sub-region model. So central grants and aid, participation, it's a little bit different. Kimberly and Electoral Area E support only the Kimberly Public Library, and then Electoral Area C supports only the Cranbrook Library. And there's actually a service set up for that. So the Kimberly Public Library is funded through us for the RDK taxation through Kimberly and Electoral Area E. And it works out to $8 per average residential property. Okay, so regional parks, total requisition is 643,000. And again, that's all jurisdictions. Traditional, the regional parks were always funded by everybody. And as Manager Patterson mentioned, the boat launch is funded through everybody from Cranbrook to Elkford. Area E is not included in that. And then Markham McPhail, Westside Legacy is all the Columbia Valley jurisdictions, so electoral areas and municipalities. So the cost for regional parks because of that model then average between $8 and $15. So $8 would be for just your regional parks for Central. Area E pays $7 because the boat launch is $1, and the Columbia Valley jurisdictions are paying $15 per average residential. The Central Sub-Region Emergency Management Program. So requisitions just over 192,000. Apportionment is by assessment, and that works out to $9 per average residential property. So we have the 3 sub-regions. We are looking to amalgamate those. Last year in the 2024 taxes, in keeping in mind that this was going to be happening, we kind of refunded all of the reserves that we had collected for each sub-region. So that brought the taxation down for the emergency management last year, which brought it down for the jurisdictions. And then this year, we didn't have those reserves to rely on, so the taxation drifted back up to what it normally would have been, plus the increase. Wages have always been apportioned in each sub-region according to assessment. So there shouldn't be a lot of difference when we do this amalgamation. On a side note, when the RDK has an emergency event and the province gives us a task number, that task number is used, we track it, it's used for the overtime and contracted EOC staff that the province is covering for. So that is being funded outside of the RDK. In regular daytime, I mean, we are in the EOC a lot during the daytime, Monday to Friday. Any of that time is funded through the electoral area admin service. So municipalities are not paying towards that. And it's quite a significant amount. So municipalities don't pay for that because when you have an emergency, you're paying for that for yourself. And we recognize that. Okay. Any need a jump start. Thank you. Okay, so we're wrapping it up with the Kootenai East Regional Hospital District. And as CO Tomlin mentioned, that is the area for the hospital district expanded. So there's 86,000 residents in the hospital district boundary with the 2021 census, 63,000 property folios and occurrences. So it's quite large. Next. So the hospital district typically provides 40% funding for interior health capital projects. The 2025 financial plan has just under 35 million in capital projects for interior health throughout the Court area. IHA continues to work on the replacement of the existing FW Green Home in Cranbrook, and that will include the addition of 88 new beds. The project is 154.5 million in total, and the hospital district share is $62.6 million. So the project will take place in 2 phases, and its estimated completion is still 2029. So if you recall back in 2020, 2021, 2022, we added additional taxation of $30 per average residential property in each year. And we were doing that in preparation for funding a large project. We knew something was coming down. We just didn't know what. So due to that initiative, the hospital district will have just enough funds to cover the $62.6 million budget for the Green Home. And then in January, the announcement was made for the oncology and renal expansion project. And this project will cost $58.9 million. And it's for the construction of a new 2-story building with its own parking area. So the hospital district share is 23.2 million. And that's also set to be completed in 29-30. So we're getting a big cash flow hit all at the same time. So in 2025, the board approved taxation once again of an additional $30 per average residential property in each year. This time it's 2024 through 2029. And that will build reserves for the oncology renal project and future large projects. Also in the budget is 3% for inflationary costs for smaller capital projects and just operational costs for the hospital district. We did not add the inflationary to 2025. It says 26 through 29, and it's usually about $4 per average residential. The 2025 budget also has $2 million that was pledged to the city of Kimberley for the health center upgrade project. And if the board approves the request for up to an additional 8 million, that will be funded through reserves. The regional district region is extensive, and there's many hospitals and many large projects needed in the future. So right now, putting this money to reserve and having those funds is really great. Right now, we are debt-free and we're earning interest instead of paying it. In 2024, we earned just under $1.2 million in interest, which is really quite something. But I can see a point as these big projects come down, I can see a point where we will need to possibly go into some debenture debt for some really, really long-term projects. So right now we can do it with the $30 increase per year. And it's great to have that interest funding those projects as well. So the total requisition, which I failed to put on for the hospital district for 2025 is 16.35 million. And Kimberley's requisition for that is 1.06 million. So the cost per average residential property in the hospital district area is $209 this year. And that's based on a property valued at $519,000 because it's a bigger area and it's lower value for the average assessment. So there's the increase for $30. So that concludes the financial presentation. I just want to say the 5-year financial plan in its entirety and a really good snapshot for the Coles Notes version can be found at engage@rdek.bc.ca under 5-year financial plan. It's very large. It's about 400 pages because every service has a budget memo and the actual financial plan for it. So it's pretty big. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Council? Councilor McGuire.
I just had a question about the library one. For the library, you said that all communities participate in, or all areas participate in that. So like for Cranbrook, does that mean that Cranbrook's, you mentioned that Area C contributes to Cranbrook, but does Cranbrook also pay into that? Is that correct?
Well, the city of Cranbrook has their public library. Control Area C pays 20%. Residents of Cranbrook pay for the rest. Whereas in Kimberley, the city of Kimberley and the Control Area E pay into the requisition from the RDEK. And then we take that money and we fund the grant to the Kimberley Public Library.
Right. So in Cranbrook, Cranbrook's taking tax on behalf of the library themselves, as opposed to giving it to you to then give back to the library.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just curious about that because it's a little bit of an interesting situation where we're giving you money to give to the library, where we give the library money too. Just curious. I also had a question about arts. I was curious if any of the areas have arts funding that's collected from the regional district to participate in some of the art centers. I know that the local art centers here is looking at that, so I was just curious.
Well, we don't provide funding to the Arts Center for the most part. That's done through the various grants. We have the Columbia Basin Trust Ready grants that we administer. They're funded through that. In the Columbia Valley, we have the big Columbia Valley Center that is funded through Columbia Valley Recreation, Columbia Valley Economic Development through, and it's all the municipalities and the electoral areas that contribute to that. But we don't have specific grants for the arts. We do provide some support through the discretionary grants and aid that each electoral area has. So there's a certain amount of money put aside by the director, and applications can be made for a discretionary grant. It's not meant to be, the same thing every year. It's just as things come up, they can make a request through the application. So not a specific every arts.
Yeah, no, I was curious more if there was like a specific service that was already existing within the RDEK that funded that in some other region, but it doesn't sound like there is, so that's fine. Thanks.
There's not. All right. Sorry, go ahead, Mayor McCormick.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for the level of detail. I think council has an appreciation for not only the broader function of the RDEK, but how it integrates with a lot of the things that we do here. All of this just happens in the background for the most part. And we don't see an awful lot of visibility, and a lot of people are doing a lot of good work. And thanks for showing us tonight.
Can I get a mover to adjourn? Councilor McGuire, second. Councilor, all in favor?